So here is a high-res version of God of War Laufey's artwork, and I thought I'd go through it because there are quite a few interesting tidbits throughout. So first of all, I don't know, this cool-looking enemy here, very cool design. Seems to have a horn going through his mouth, and obviously there's the cube, the cosmic cube, the sword, and her herself. Now, if you just scroll a little bit to her right, you can see one of the locations possibly within the game is what looks to be like some sort of fiery lightning forest that has very sort of tribalistic and harsh sort of structures and potentially enemies. So from this lightning forest, you go into this fiery realm here. Now, we potentially get a glimpse of one of the first sort of enemies or bosses, major ones here, which is these sort of like white dragons. Now, obviously, in perspective and size of the rest of the environment, they would be massive. Further on, here we get a glimpse of what could be another potential main sort of enemy or boss, which looks like some sort of massive serpent snake thing. So I assume this might be water or something else below the clouds. But then I want to draw you over to here. So on the right side, we've got this forest cave section. There are what look to be structures in the mountain. I don't know if you'll go there or climb up this thing, and then through this forest is what looks like a kind of Arthurian castle or fort or whatever. And that is quite interesting because I don't know if anyone's been following some of the rumors around what the sword is that Faye is carrying. Well, there are some sort of theories from fans that the sword itself could be Excalibur or its twin sword, Galatine. So, sort of following Arthurian legend. And there are more ties that kind of give these theories more sort of credence. For example, in the legend, King Arthur receives Excalibur from the Lady of the Lake. And Laufey faces a similar vow, it says, when she retrieves the sword from the magical liquid cube. So there are theories that, the cube itself could be a lake safeguarding Excalibur. Obviously, Rue is controlling it with the ribbons or whatever, but it kind of resembles what could be a lake in form. And then the other thing is Arthur's half sister in the tale. Her name is Morgan Le Fay, and that again has sort of tie into Laufey. Also, Le Fay is a powerful enchantress, and Laufey is actually reported to be one of the most powerful magic wielders in all of the sort of mythos. And finally, Arthur is a Pendragon, head dragon, and the visual sort of motif on her sword is potentially also of a dragon. So they could potentially converge the two mythos together, the two tales. So there's numerous different things that could tie the sword in with Arthurian lore, and then obviously we have this sort of medieval knight type architecture and areas. Right now, on the left side, we have sort of what looks like a magical forest, but again, it goes into sort of these either elven or Arthurian or again possibly medieval looking structures which you could go to. And then on the left side is what looks like this magical marsh jungly type thing, so you can see these huge sort of magic sparks, but at the same time it looks like some sort of foresty marsh. I don't know what it is, but we have another glimpse of what could either be a structure or could be another potential main enemy in the game, like a big giant boss, which is this huge scorpion looking thing. And then above that, it's I assume something quite important. It's if it's an Egyptian thing or whatever, but there's this big light coming and this sort of very ornate and detailed, extravagant looking sort of structures here. And if you remember in the reveal, they see this big glowing light in the distance, and I think it could potentially be this. And then a bit further on, going back to the center side of the image, we also have this lighthouse type big platform and plateau with lots of different structures, which also has a drawbridge connecting it to this whole area as well. So if you were to travel to these areas through the game, you could potentially cross through here, cross through the drawbridge into this, this other location. And then this other location, the actual telescope is pointing to this big. For some reason, it's cut off. I don't have the original with whatever's on this mountain, but there is some sort of magical location and structure at the very top of this mountain, which is what this telescope is pointing at. And then, in the distance, you also have these kind of what looks like these wooden platforms, maybe a civilization that lives in the mountains. Again, fiery wooden sort of structures built into the mountains. You've got more sort of dragons, whatever, I don't know. But there's more of those kind of enemies. But just again, just a rough gist. On the right side, you've got this sort of more deserty, dusty rock kind of faced structure and location that you could go to. But yeah, point is, across the board, there are a whole range of very interesting takeaways from this artwork that could potentially give just a small glimpse of some of the things that we might see, experience, and whether or not for example, the cube, the sword, and so on ties into other mythos, in particular Arthurian.